Alright, so I started turning down this piece of 3/4 inch diameter brass stock, and going to make the directional control valve out of this, and that's going to get turned down to 1930 seconds, which is about 594 thousandths. So I'm almost there. I got to go a little bit more on that. Got about another 2.5 thousandths to go on that. So okay, so we're right there. Alright, so I'm going to face that off, get that nice and smooth. Alright, so what I went ahead and did in the V block, I put the piece of stock that we're going to be making the valve out of, and I centered it in line with the spindle, and I just took a gauge pin, put it in the collet, and lined it up so that this was able to travel in and out without touching, and establish the 0 point in both the X and the Y axis here. And right now I have a center drill in here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the digital readout, and I'll lay out a simple bolt circle, and I'll just touch the 4 spots just as a reference, so when I put the end mill in, I'll know, just as a sanity check here. So let's bring you over to the digital readout and show you how we set up a bolt circle, which I think I've mastered with this thing by now. And alright, so I got both X and Y zeroed out, and that's on the center of the pivot hole for the reversing valve, and it's an absolute mode. So now let's switch this over to a bolt circle. And I don't know if I mentioned earlier with another project I was working on, this wrongly prompts you for the diameter. It's really asking you for the radius, and unfortunately the instruction book is not very clear, and this is all by trial and error. So as the bolt circle radius for this particular diameter here is going to be 3/16 of an inch. $18.75, we'll enter that. Okay, the starting angle, I want to use just the Y direction to mill the slots. So we're going to start at 45 degrees. 0 is actually like 3 o'clock or 9 o'clock, depending on the orientation of your scale direction for the x-axis. So we're going to start at 45 degrees, which I already have entered in there. And the ending angle, being there's 4 holes, is going to be 315 degrees. So that'll actually stop it like at the like 130 position. And we still have 4 holes from before. We'll enter that. So now we'll zero this out and both directions here. Okay. All right. And I'm just going to do a little spot on that as a sanity check. Go to the next hole. Oh. Now, the Y direction is staying the same, so we're just moving the table over in the X direction right now. All right, let me bring you back over to the piece and see what we got. Okay, so I think you guys can see I got 4 holes here laid out, and now what I'll do is I'll put a 1/16 of an inch end mill in here, and I'll just use the Y-axis and I'll just mill out a slot connecting these 2 holes here, and then move it over and then mill out a slot there. Alright, so I didn't have a 1/16 of an inch end mill, so I stopped off at Victor Machinery Exchange the other day, and I had to pick one up. So the privilege of seeing a brand new 1/16 of an inch end mill here. So let me get this out of the case it came in. Yeah, there you go. How about that? Well, it looks like it wants to break just looking at it. So, alright, we'll get this in the collet and we'll get cutting. Alright, so now I got the table locked in the X position. I got the end mill in here, and we're going to go down a 1/16 of an inch and feed it in the Y direction until the digital readout zeroes out. Now I'm thinking I might go a little less than a 1/16. Maybe I'll go like 20 and see how it goes first. So let's see. Let's get a brush and clean that off there. Okay, so I'm gonna move it over in the X axis, and I'll do the same thing. I'll cut that slot with just using the Y axis there. Alright, so I think you guys get a good look at this now. So here we got a slot here and here, 1/16 of an inch deep, 1/16 of an inch wide. And so what we got to do now is we got to bring this back on the lathe and part this off. The overall length of this piece has to be 3/16 of an inch long. So we'll get this out of here and back over on the lathe. Alright, so we got to take about 41 thousandths off of that and just make sure. Okay, so we got some room for that. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it there. So, alright, just gotta drill a little counter bore on that and just break that edge over there. Alright, so we got to drill a 1/16 of an inch hole at a 15-degree angle in here. So I set this up in my little machinist vise. This slot is parallel to the top of the vise, and I have a gauge pin in here, and I'll just find the center, and I have an angle block here, and I'll put that in the mill. Alright, so I have this angle block in here, 15-degree angle block, and I'm going to set this up in here. Okay, and what I'll do now, I'll get an edge finder in here and locate the center of this valve and drill a 1/16 of an inch hole down into the valve body. Alright, this valve, say it is done. So the handle will get Loctited in there, and keep moving along. Alright, see you guys back with the next part.